Falcha, you are very welcome. This is another edition in the Mind Your Precious Self series, and it's Spring Clean Your Mind. Now, that might sound like a very interesting topic to you because spring cleaning your mind, well, we often think of spring cleaning our homes, spring cleaning our wardrobes, spring cleaning the attic, and various other places in our abode, even the garden shed, maybe. But do we actually think about spring cleaning our minds? Not necessarily, but yet it's one of the most important things that we can possibly do. And let me tell you why. If you imagine, as I'm sure many of you are very familiar, that we live in a holistic world. We have the mind, we have the body, and we have the soul. And the three of them are inextricably linked. And of course, so often we look after the body. Some of us might actually look after the soul, but we might leave the mind until last, or it's not the most obvious thing to look after. Like me, many of you might be from Ireland, and we grew up in an environment where anything to do with our mind was very, shall we say, taboo, especially if there was any sense of imbalance, be that depression or anxiety or anything in the mind, overwhelm even. Time has moved on, and thankfully we live in a different Ireland. And right across the world, we have come to know that looking after our mental health is so important. And that's a really good thing. In fact, I sometimes smile at those in my wonderful extended family, especially the younger ones, who speak so freely about how they think, what's going on, any ups or downs in life. And part of me is so envious of them that they have this ability to be so honest. Sometimes I think searingly honest, but it's a new culture, it's a new way of being, and it's healthier. But if, like me, you perhaps grew up in a family or an environment or society where we weren't taught how to do that, certainly not at home and perhaps not at school, and maybe even the University of Life hasn't taught us. But here we are today, and there are many, many things we can do to unload old ways, old thoughts, ancient thoughts even, from our mind. Let's imagine our beautiful, organic, tiny ego human minds are a bit like our computers. Yeah, so we get that. And we have lots of files and folders in our computers. But you know the way every so often our computers tell us it's overloaded, or we need to delete some files or some folders? Well, life's a bit like that, except we don't get the warning necessarily in the way we would imagine. In our computers, we're told an email comes up, or we get this little window comes up and says, you're running out of file space in your computer. So that's, oh yeah, okay. But our bodies will tell us in no uncertain terms, with very clear information from our minds, delete, delete, overload, overload. And a bit like those cartoon characters with steam coming out of our ears, if we don't change something, if we don't release those old thoughts, those old ways, then we do go either spiraling down into depression or spiraling up into anxiety. And sometimes some of us are a little bit more exotic and we manage to do both anxiety and depression. A double whammy that is not very pleasant. So let's talk about what we can do on practical terms to prevent that happening. In other words, as we go along through life, we begin to let go, release, and delete those old files that we no longer want. Well, firstly, how do you know what they are? Because we don't want to delete the wonderful, happy memories and the very important things to remember, but we do want the old things to go. Well, there's a couple of really good ways of doing this. So the first one I'm going to offer to you is called the timeline. Now, this is a great way to spring clean your mind. You get a piece of paper and you draw a line across it. And on the top, you jot down 0 to 10, 10 to 20, 20 to 30, 30 to 40, to whatever age you are today. And you, stream of consciousness style, you write on the top line little markers of happy, really wonderful occurrences in your life. Oh, I remember when I was 4, my granny taught me how to feed the cat, and it was a big deal. When I was 7, I made my first Holy Communion and I got to wear this white dress, blah, blah, blah. And all of these wonderful things on the top line. But underneath is what we're really concerned about. This is where you write incidents that were not good or pleasant or were challenging or difficult. And it might be the first time your beloved pet cat died. It could be the mean girl at school. It could be the first time a partner dumped you. You get the idea. And then you look at the timeline, particularly those on the underneath part, and you think, oh, well, it wasn't really nice when Fluffy the cat died, but, he was a great cat. And then you move on to the first time that your boyfriend or girlfriend dumped you. And you begin to feel a little bit of heat in your body, or a little bit of emotion comes up. Circle that. And then you move on to perhaps maybe some exam you did and you didn't do as well as you thought. And you kind of went, oh yeah, whatever. And then maybe something that happened that was maybe sometime you felt you were shamed, or you were, your confidence dipped. And again, you begin to note you're starting to feel feelings that are not pleasant as you think about this event that happened years ago. And again, you put a circle about it, and so on. The events that you put a circle around, these are the ones that you need to look at and release old ways of thinking about it. Now, it could be sitting and realizing, why was I so upset when I was dumped by that guy? Okay, because it was public, because it wasn't done very well, because I felt embarrassed. Everybody else seemed to be in a relationship and I wasn't. And then you might look back and think, oh gosh, we were only kids. We were only 17. We didn't really know what we were doing. Or actually, if I'm really honest, I was kind of relieved because I kind of felt we were getting a bit too serious too soon. And then that alone might allow your mind to spring clean the thoughts to do with that event. Or maybe the emotion comes up more and you think, this is a bit of a pattern in my life. Gosh, I remember the first time I was let go from that job. I had similar feelings. So in that case, you might actually consider going to a professional counselor or psychotherapist and just having a few sessions to really work through, or to use the jargon, to unpack the feelings to do with that event in your life and let it go. Spring clean, space in your mind now, you've let that go, you've worked through it. And so on, to do with your timeline. It's a really, really interesting little technique. And I would only do it when you're fed and watered and relaxed. I wouldn't do it if you're in a rush, perhaps not if there's other people in the room, or if you have to, if only a small amount of time. Leave spaciousness to try this technique. It's a way of creating space. It's a way of deleting those old files and folders in your mind. So that's the first tip I'm going to give you. Now, the second one might make you smile, but I'm guessing that many of you will really nod sagely and go, yeah, I understand this one. And it's to do with worrying thoughts. But we can also add in here anxious thoughts, negative thoughts. Let's take worrying first. There is an expression that's not true, actually. Oh, she's a born worrier. Actually, none of us are born worriers. It's a habit we pick up, usually early in life, often from a parent or a grandparent, and sometimes an older sibling. We see mommy worries. That's just what it seems like women do that. Or maybe dad is always worried about the bills, or maybe his genuine worries. But in our childhood state, we take on this habit. We assume sometimes it gives us a little bit of importance if we're really worrying about something. It's a habit that can help us ruminate. Isn't that a good word? So play over and over again in our minds, creating a lot of heat in our minds and taking energy away from all of our vital processes in our body because we're overthinking. Ruminating. Yeah, like the cows chewing the cud. Overthinking. Now, if you're thinking, oh my gosh, I worry like I am absolutely a worrier, then listen on. If you're thinking, well, it's not so much worrying, but I do have anxious thoughts. Or, well, I don't worry and I don't have anxious thoughts, but my thoughts are negative more than they're positive. Well, then this little tip I'm going to give you will work for all of them. Now, it's a three-pronged approach. The first one seems really simple, is to be aware of your thoughts. What are you worrying about? What are you anxious about? What are you negatively thinking about? What is the negative thought? And maybe jot it down. I'm thinking about my job. I'm worrying about somebody's health. I'm worrying about somebody doing an exam. I'm worried about the weather. Is it going to rain later on today? Sometimes we worry about the strangest things. And then leave that. Now, you'll probably still worry or be anxious or have negative thoughts, but at least you're aware of it. And then comes tip number 2. And this is where you distract yourself. So you take your wonderful mind and you, in a wonderful, gentle way, creative way, you occupy it so that it can't worry or be anxious or have negative thoughts. Now, let me give you some ideas. One is you watch a film, you phone a friend, you pick up a book. Music is a good one. You get out of the house, you go for a walk. There's so many. Whatever works for you. If you're into, let's say you're into reading and you're stuck in the book. Oh my, this is amazing. And suddenly you realize, oh my gosh, I've been there for an hour. And you think you're in the place where the book is set. Let's say it's, oh my gosh, I think I'm in Paris. Oh, no, hey, I'm in Dublin, or I'm in wherever I am. For that 1 hour, you haven't been worrying or anxious or negatively thinking. And that means that your mind has a chance to rest, even though it's gently occupied. But be really creative. Whatever you are passionate about doing, if you love to play music, if you love to dance, if you love to anything, garden, then these would be really good distractions. Now, let's say you're in a situation where maybe you're in a family scenario, or you're at work, or you're in your studies, whatever it is, and you can't suddenly whip out a book or start dancing on the boardroom table. Well, in that case, you can use some lovely mindful techniques. Become aware of your breath, become aware of the colors around you, the furniture, the light, what's out the window. And again, that's a really simple way to gently distract you from the worry. Try it. It really works. But however, being aware and distracting yourself are great, but they're not getting to the root of the problem. And that's where we want to go next. So the third and really important part of this technique is where you do the practice of positive self-talk. What? Karen, you're asking me to talk to myself? Yes, because we're in the business of spring cleaning your mind. So we want to clear out. But we're thinking of your mind as the beautiful organic entity that it is. It's part of you. It's not you, and it's not all of you, but it's an important part of you. And to talk soothingly to your mind, to calm yourself down, And most importantly, to really look at the topic because you have an awareness of what you're thinking about. And that might be calm down, relax, everything's fine. What am I like? I don't need to be thinking about that. Really, where am I going with this? It's fine. Everything's fine. Just let it go. Let it go. You get the idea. So it's a very self-soothing talk, and it would be the type of talk you would say to a friend who is in difficulty. So if there was a friend who was really worried about something, or really anxious, or really negative, it's as though you're talking to them in a very gentle, calming manner. So very similar, except this time you're talking to yourself. And you might even personalize your mind. I know some people, this sounds great, but it works. Some people give their mind a special name. Philomena, what do you like? Calm down. Or they imagine that there's the two aspects of their brain, the inner critic and the inner coach, and they're balancing between the two. Whatever works. I know somebody, and she's a very wise woman, and she imagines that when she labels thoughts, she distracts herself. But when she gets to the positive self-talk, she imagines putting the worry about grandma's health on a fluffy cloud, and then she blows it away. Or she imagines putting it into a fancy box, sealing the lid, and off it goes. In other words, she's handing over the worry, the anxious, negative thought, to something else. And this spirals me back to the talk of holistic, because depending on what you see your soul as, what is your soul, your energy field, your vital essence, your authentic higher self, known by many names. You might call it your spirit. But if you hand over and take away this negative, anxious, worrying thought, you're giving it over to something else, something transpersonal, other than yourself, any belief system that you might have to help you take away these thoughts to clear your mind. And that might be a formal religion, or it might be an eclectic mix, or it might be to go and tell your troubles to a tree. St. Anthony, look after, whatever works. But to formally recognize that, one, we have old thoughts in our heads that we do not need. Two, like the computer, we can delete them. And three, there are techniques that we can do. And it's important that we take this time to actually recognize, maybe even, should I say, the repetition of these. In other words, this might not be a new worry or anxious thought or negative thought, but what's going on in your mind has been going on for years. This sometimes happens when we have the same row with our loved ones. In other words, anytime you're upset or there's an emotional release, you spiral back to that one, and you never do this, and I feel la la la. And you think, whoa, why am I carrying that around in my mind? Let's sit down when we're both feeling good, fed, watered, breathing nice and deeply, and compromise, come to a solution, and then agree, look, we're not going to bring that up again. It's not helpful. And move on. As we get older, our beautiful minds become wiser. As in, we don't need to be thinking about these negative things. Clear the decks. There's a wonderful, how do we say, it's a section of Indian society. And you sometimes see them depicted in National Geographic, and they're usually older people, and they're wandering around in saffron, orangey type robes with a stick and a bowl, and that's it. They're called the Sadducees. And you don't see as many of them anymore, but basically back in the day, they were people who were retired, if you will. They had had their student years, they'd had their mother-father years, and now they had given all their worldly goods away, and they were walking around trusting that someone would feed them, and somebody would house them, give them a bed for the night. Now, granted, it was a warm country, so it didn't have inclement weather like you might have where you live. But I often think, oh my gosh, the amazing way, the trust they had that life would provide for them is extraordinary. But they weren't just releasing their family homes. They were releasing emotionally, mentally, their former life. They didn't need to worry about work or feeding the children. That was all past. They were moving into a new phase of their life. And we can do, how would you say, a modern version of that. In other words, depending on the age you are, if you have an empty nest, if your family have moved away, if you're coming to retirement age, but also maybe you're at the stage where your children are going to school now, they're a little bit more independent. These are key markers where we spring clean our mind, where we delete and let go what we didn't need before. I mean, maybe you're not appreciating that you're sleeping all night now, when there was a time when your little ones were small that, sleep deprivation was a major part of your life. That's important to recognize. Oh yeah, you really have come far with that. I'd like to go back to the term spring clean. I think you've probably heard me joke before that we don't say autumn clean or winter clean or spring, summer clean. It's spring, because this is the time of the year where there is increasing light, bringing hope. It's a grand stretch in the evenings, as we say here. We can see the trees, the plants, the flowers budding, beginning to blossom. There's life. The sap is rising externally, but internally. So we're beginning to gather the energy and the momentum to clear our homes, to wash those murky windows, to get stuff down from the attic, put a lick of paint here, but to leave time for your mind in all this. And it could be after the physical exertion of clearing under the stairs or the attic or the basement or whatever, that you might take some time out on the sofa. And maybe the clearing out has brought up old things. Oh my gosh, there's my baby clothes from my eldest. And then you realize, oh my gosh, there's an old school jotter. Or we got that on holidays. That's from an ex-relationship. Why am I keeping that in my home? And that might trigger thoughts and emotional release. If there's a few tears, shed them. If there's loads of tears, shed them. If you're dancing around with rage over, let the anger out, because the emotional release goes in tandem with the release of all of those things in our mind that we don't need. We're sweeping out the cobwebs, if they say. And that means that when you've cleared out your computer, you can see that new window comes up and it goes, oh, you have so much more space now in your computer. And you're thinking, yeah, great. Similarly, now we have more space in our mind, and we can choose to fill it or not. We might leave that spaciousness, or we might decide to fill it with a new hobby, learn a new language, read more, watch films, have those great conversations, whatever it might be. Very, very important. Spring cleaning your mind gives us an opportunity to be the best we can be. We're human, absolutely. Do we make mistakes? Absolutely, all the time. But if we strive to be the best we can be, then we are in a position to live our lives, live our epic lives in the very, very best way possible. I hope this, in another of our Mind Your Precious Self series, has been helpful to you. And there's lots more of these free talks on our YouTube channel. I look forward to bringing more to you in the future. And I thank and really, really am grateful for the Instagram comments and the Facebook comments, because this is organic too. This is growing, and I respond to you. Mille buíochas, 1,000 thanks, agus slán go fóill. Goodbye for a little while.